Hi all. At the time of filming, it's August 2026. So we've had our first little rush of making tax digital for income tax. And It's a time to look back at MTD. Um, what is it? Where's it going? Making tax digital, as you know, is a government initiative designed to modernise the tax system by requiring businesses and individuals to maintain digital financial records and submit updates on a quarterly basis using HMRC compatible software. So both the taxpayer and HMRC have the same information to look at during the course of the year. Um, so to understand the timeline and the thresholds, the implementation of MTD depends entirely on your qualifying income. So your gross turnover or rental income before expenses, rather than your net profit. MTD for VAT is already active, and it's mandatory for all VAT registered businesses, regardless of whether registration was voluntary. So for VAT registered businesses, they're already conversant with the records that need to be kept for making tax digital and the reporting. If you're used to having a cash book, have a cash book. But for the purposes of VAT, the sales ledger and purchase ledger typically is summarized in a digital spreadsheet in a particular format, and the totals of that spreadsheet are reported to HMRC by the taxpayer or their agents. MTD for income tax is now active, and it's mandated from 6th of April 2026 for sole traders and landlords with qualifying income over 50,000. There are subsequent phases bringing in more people. So MTD for income tax from 6th of April 27 will be for those with qualifying income over 30,000, and from 6th of April 28 for those with qualifying income over 20,000. So you can see that's going to bring quite a lot of people into this quarterly basis, and HMRC have put a great deal of effort into having digital identifiers for sole traders and landlords businesses. So to follow the new reporting rules, if you do fall within the scope of MTD for income tax, your reporting rhythm in the past has been one final annual submission and payments on account. That doesn't really change, except that you now have four quarterly submissions of income and expenses. And if you're already submitting MTD for VAT, those submissions are going to look awfully like your VAT returns, if that makes sense. So your total income will be the total of the sales ledger, the purchases and expenses, and you're already doing that in the MTD for VAT. What will be novel for the sole traders and landlords who have not been VAT registered, and there are about 3 million of them, will be this record keeping. But all businesses keep records of one kind or another, and an important record is the bank statement, and most business people are used to keeping a cash book, whether it be manual or in spreadsheet form. And with online banking these days, of course, that's incredibly convenient because you can take a download from the bank, which basically gives you your digital record in a very reliable way. So for a lot of people, it's a question more of organising the resources they've got. They'll be used to keeping a track of sales invoices and purchase invoices, if only to pay them and get paid. So it's not a big step. So if you fall within the scope of MTD for income tax, you have to keep digital records. You must track all business income and expenses digitally, using spreadsheets, or if you want to use the accounting apps, they're now incredibly efficient and connected to the bank. And with the addition of AI, we're really seeing those come into their own. It saves us an immense amount of time as accountants if we have an AI classifying the bank transactions for us, so that we're reviewing documents rather than blow by blow going through the transactions and making digital records. So that's really come into its own, and should help everyone monitor the health of their business, and their cash flow in particular, and their profitability. And these are all sort of routine business management things which need attending to. The 4 quarterly updates are essentially one spreadsheet, but updated on a rolling basis. So the first submission is for the first quarter. The next submission is for the 6 months, and the next submission for the 9 months, and the following submission, the submission after that, for the period of account, which is typically of a year, on a cumulative basis, and that will be expected to be submitted. So, for example, the final 7th of May deadline will be for the period 6th January to 5th April for the sole traders and landlords. So by 7th of May, the quarterly updates have been made, and then you submit one final declaration, and you must submit a comprehensive final declaration by 31st January following the end of the tax year. Now that should sound pretty familiar for those who are in self-assessment. So basically not a lot is changing in terms of payment of tax, the amount of tax obviously, and the dates on which it's paid. Those remain the same. The novelty is the digital records and the digital handshake with HMRC, which you either do yourself. There are something like 91 solutions approved by HMRC to do this, but typically people will go to bridging software and the sort of top 3, top 4 accounting apps to do this, depending on the complexity of your affairs. If your affairs are very straightforward, a small sole trade business and a couple of properties, well, what's not to like about a spreadsheet? But if it gets any bigger than that, you're employing staff, you're doing VAT, then you'll be looking to the accounting apps to help you do this. It's billed as replacing the traditional self-assessment. I mean, to some extent, digitally it is, but actually, it's pretty much, we're covering the same ground, and we're resulting in the same tax charge. We just have to cope with this element of complexity in submitting a cumulative spreadsheet for the sole traders and the landlords. And for those whose turnover is below the VAT threshold, it's pretty straightforward. So although the reporting frequency has changed, the tax payment deadlines remained unchanged, and 31st January and 31st July for payments on account. So I hope that's a sort of helpful summary of where we're at in August 2027, and I look forward to seeing you all very soon. Okay, bye.